Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm gonna show you the top 25 most unique JRPG battle systems of all time. But I'm not gonna waste your time with the bad ones or the convoluted ones, only great JRPGs and with great battle systems that are also very unique. So let's begin! Number 25, Battenkitos. This is a turn-based RPG where you do everything with cards. Up to 3 characters participate in battle, each with their own set of cards. Some are unique to each, but most can be equipped by anyone. In battle, they will have a deck with a limited number of cards, but they can shuffle after you've used them all up. During each character's turn, you'll get a few of them randomly, one by one. Some will be melee attacks, usually represented by weapons or objects, others will be magic spells. But like I said before, only some characters can equip some of them, like swords or guns or spells. Other cards will be healing items, others will be defensive items represented by armor. After you have used up your turn the few cards you got, you'll get a result screen to see how much damage or healing or whatever you caused. The enemies do not use cards, they just act whenever it's their turn. I think this battle system is extremely original and unique. There are some card RPGs out there, but nothing, and I mean nothing like this one. Except, of course, Origins, its prequel, which is also included in this Switch remaster. Number 24, Ogre Battle. Both the SNES and the N64 games have the exact same battle mechanics. They revolve around setting a bunch of groups, each with one commander. You'll send that commander to either capture bases or defend yours. This is done in a real-time strategy formula. You give them their destination and the enemy does the same, all happening at the same time. If one of your units makes contact with an enemy, this battle screen occurs. It's turn-based, yeah, but it's out of your control. The characters you selected for the group will attack whoever they want, however they want. You can influence a little bit these brawls by trying out different characters and deciding who to have them fight against. You can also use cards to summon spells and stuff like that, but you can't give direct orders to your characters. This is quite a creative combat that might not be that unique nowadays, but it was back in the day, and it certainly influenced many others out there. Number 23, Mega Man Battle Network. This series has a really interesting and unique combat. Basically, you control Mega Man in a grid-based system, but it isn't turn-based. You have to constantly move him around and shoot bullets in order to both hit the enemies and avoid their attacks. It's very simple actually, but it's very good. Before every battle starts though, you have to select your battle chip. These are the equivalent of summons because Mega Man only attacks with his regular shots through his weapon, which is the Mega Buster, so the summons do a lot of damage to their enemies. And once that custom gauge up there fills up, you can choose more battle chips to help you out. I think they knew this combat was original but simple at the same time, so adding features like the battle chips and the elements made it more engaging. This game became an entire series of its own, with several sequels that added different features of their own. Number 22, R No Surge. This is a prequel to the R Tonelico trilogy, but this combat is quite unique. It's basically a really interesting evolution from the one seen in R Tonelico 2. Here, you control only 2 characters per battle, your attacker and the mage. Mages cannot act because they are casting song magic by singing, that's right, while the attacker protects them. Buttons are assigned to either guard against attacks against you, against her, or against both, but also to use regular attacks and execute chain attacks. You'll have your player turn to perform as many combos as you can, but also to defeat as many enemies as you can. You can end the battle after a while, but if you want to, you can continue until killing every single enemy in a specific area. Yeah, you can get rid of every random encounter in just one battle if you want to. As for the magic attack, the caster will have it ready within a couple of turns, but the more you wait, the more energy they put into their spell. Then you can activate it at any time you feel appropriate and do colossal damage to your enemies. I love Japanese RPGs precisely because a lot of them are stupidly creative when it comes to battle mechanics like this. Number 21, Grand Kingdom. This strategy RPG also mixes tactical maps, but with turn-based combat. It's one of those where you hire and customize mercenaries to send them to different missions. Each mission will only allow you to take one party of 4 characters, regardless of their class. They'll advance as a unit in this roguelike map. You heard that right, roguelike. Your unit is represented by a piece, and so are the enemies, but if you move, they move too. So you have to maneuver as best you see fit to do your exploration, avoid traps and open chests, but also to run into them without being ambushed. You don't have to kill all enemies in the map to succeed. Once a battle starts, this side-by-side formation will ensue. Your characters will always start at the left side and can move between layers, but every action, including movement, is bound by an action points bar, so you gotta decide where to move first before you do anything. Because of that same bar, your attacks will be limited but can often end up in a guard, same with the enemies. Everybody can break each other's guard using different ways like skills or even regular attacks. There's also the use of traps that the enemy will lay out to cover, but also to hurt you. But as a matter of fact, you can do the same. The key is to try out different classes and see which ones you're more comfortable with for your strategies. It's a very good game, but also a grind fest, keep that in mind. Number 20, Parasite Eve. Parasite Eve is yet another RPG that nowadays may not seem that unique, but it certainly was for its time. You control only Aya during battle and she has 2 types of attacks. Firearm, depending on whatever she has currently equipped, and her skills, which rely on her parasite energy. Using either attack or skill requires a sphere grid to appear after an active time bar, known as ATB, is full. Once it shows up, the game pauses to let you decide what to do. Then you'll have to wait for it to fill up again so you can use an action. In the meantime, you'll have to move around in order to avoid enemy attacks if possible, because they will never wait for you and don't have a sphere grid or anything like that. If you run out of ammo, you'll have to recharge when the grid shows up, and if your enemy's out of range, you'll have to approach it before you can execute your actions. It's very simple, really, and I think anybody can understand it and get into it. This combat definitely influenced the one seen in Vagrant Story, where you basically do the same, except that game also took influence from the Front Mission series. In those, you can target a specific enemy body part, and you have to do the same in this one. I absolutely loved Parasite Eve, but Vagrant Story, I don't know why I couldn't get into it. Number 19, Generation of Chaos Pandora's Reflection. A real-time strategy RPG here, but with a twist. Up to 4 characters can be brought to this small screen where missions will take place. The goal is like in Ogre Battle, to capture enemy bases and protect them until you take down the boss. Like in any RTS, you just select the trajectory of each character and they'll move towards it on their own. But if they make contact with the enemy, a battle will occur. It'll take you to this screen where you'll have to click the required buttons at the right time to make your action successful. Not as in quick time events, but as in a timed and orderly fashion as the game instructs you. If you or your enemy succeed, then you or your enemy will be pushed backwards. But if you succeed and there are other allies around, they can join in for an extra attack. And similar to Ogre Battle as well, you can take one giant summon with you and use it once to do something massive in the battlefield like an attack or a healing spell. And that's it! Unique combat, simple yet effective, and with an interesting twist. Number 18, Final Fantasy XII. This game may not be that unique nowadays, especially since it took most of its battle mechanics from MMORPGs, but Square Enix made it work somehow for an offline video game. It also influenced the White Knight Chronicles saga and the Xenoblade Chronicles series. Up to 3 characters can be active in your party, sometimes with a guest out of your control, but you can only move around one of them. The other 2 will act on their own. In fact, during battle, that's the only thing you can do. Move! Every character has their own attack waiting bar, and once it fills up on real time, they'll execute their attack, skill, or magic spell. So it's not so different from the old SNES or PS1 Final Fantasy games which were turn-based. This is the same if you think about it, except everything here happens on real time and you're able to move around. And that's it. I didn't make it sound that unique, honestly it isn't, but for its time, there was nothing like it except MMORPGs, and since it influenced other JRPGs with similar combat, I'd say it gets a pass as a unique battle system. Number 17, Astral Chain. This game's battle system is unique for one simple reason. It's basically hack and slash or beat 'em up since you're using a button to attack. Nothing unique about that. But in this game, you're controlling 2 characters at the same time. You have a chain attached to your second character. No, it's not a summon. It's a creature that, fortunately, fights by itself, but follows your commands as you use the chain. You can click a button to order it to dash towards the enemy, or you can move it with the right joystick. You have to do the same to execute certain skills, especially rounding up enemies with the chain. And you have to do that manually. So in reality, more than half of the time, you are controlling 2 characters at the same time, and in an action RPG no less. There are 5 creatures in total, known as legions, and you can also switch to any of them at any time. Of course, as you may have expected, some enemies are easier to kill with one legion than the others, and so on. The same can be said about the puzzles, but the fact that you gotta control this secondary character to move from one platform to the other, even when fighting, is a big deal. You gotta learn how to do this and synchronize your thinking with both your hands to constantly look out for both characters. It's hard to grasp, but eventually you get used to it. Controls and camera aren't the best out there, but I do believe the developers thought this carefully. Honestly, they succeeded. Number 16, Lord of Magna, Made in Heaven. In this little obscure gem you will have control over 4 characters max during every map. It's a strategy RPG and you'll play as the guy and up to 3 girls. Each has a limited area to move around, nothing unique there. Each has different types of attacks with all different ranges, also nothing unique there. Its uniqueness comes from the fact that you face off against hordes of enemies, but most can be defeated by using attacks that push the closest ones to you against the others. By bumping around like this, you can create a domino effect, killing the ones behind them and hurting their commanders. These ones cannot be pushed and therefore bombed though. You'll need to defeat them normally. The enemy cannot use the bumping mechanic on you, don't worry, although I've always believed that would be funny. Anyway, this combat may have influenced the one seen in Dead End Request 1 and 2, where you move your character, position them, and some of their attacks make enemies bump into each other across the battlefield. It's pretty similar, I'd say. Which one is more unique? I don't know. Both? Can we stay with both? But Lord of Magna did it first, so yeah. Number 15, Black Rock Shooter. Remember Mega Man Battle Network? Well, this one's similar, but the layout is completely different. Like in Network, you fight on real time, but within turn-based combat. You only control the girl as she has a firearm. You use buttons to change between targets so you don't have to manually aim at them, but they come at you in small waves, so you need to constantly switch targets and shoot at them, because they keep moving on you every turn. If one of them manages to get through, you'll have a chance to evade the attack or defend. As I mentioned, this all happens on real time, but if you keep shooting endlessly, you'll overheat and have to recover, basically using a turn to do so while the enemy keeps moving on their own. You can also interrupt the battle to bring out this menu with up to 4 different skills attached to each action button. Some can heal, others attack or buff you, etc. You can use them all at once if you want to, but they all have a cooldown to recharge. Pretty cool battle system, huh? It may have also influenced the crap fest that was Time and Eternity, by the way. It has similar combat mechanics. I'm not gonna cover it. I said only good RPGs in this list, remember? I lied. I said great JRPGs. Number 14, Soul Nomad and the World Eaters. Soul Nomad is a strategy RPG that depends almost 100% on party formations. Maps will play out like in any other game of its kind, with characters moving on grids. However, once you select an enemy to attack, this battle screen will appear. As you see, both enemies and allies are positioned in a specific formation and they will fight on their own. First, your allies will attack, each with a different attack completely out of your control. If even one enemy is left alive, they will counterattack and might kill one of your characters. Don't worry, there is no permadeath here. So you see, the only way to influence the outcome of these battles is to make sure you have the right group against the right enemies. Sure, every group has its own commander, and if a main character is that commander, they all have special attacks, but still it's imperative to know first who you're fighting against. And the formations I mentioned aren't just yours to manipulate. Like in other JRPGs, you get different ones and have to add to it the characters you see fit, because they'll be locked in that formation for the entirety of the mission. I like this system, and the formations aspect of it wasn't as convoluted or annoying as I thought it would be. This is a great game. Number 13, Sentai Zero. This one's easy to explain since there's not much going on, but I've honestly never seen anything like it. If it looks like a dungeon crawling in first person, that's because it is. But if it looks like a roguelike RPG, where you move and the enemy moves, that's because it is. However, in this game, everything happens in real time. The enemy won't wait for you, they'll keep moving and attacking if you're fighting them, even if you don't do anything. So in theory, it's an action RPG. But you don't hack and slash your way through. You have up to 4 characters all attached to the same button though, so if you want them all to attack, and yes you want to, you'll click the action button 4 times so they'll execute their attack. Each can equip only one weapon at a time, and once they've attacked, they'll have to wait. Yes, there's a cooldown for every attack they do, and it may be slower or faster for some characters, so often you won't have them all attacking at the same time. The strategy for the bosses is to move around them, so they waste time trying to face you while you attack them from the rear or from behind. Pretty interesting, right? Well, I guess it wasn't that easy to explain after all, hence why it's a pretty unique battle system too. Number 12, Eternal Sonata. This underrated masterpiece is a hybrid like many others in this list. It combines action with turn-based. Here's how it goes. You have up to 3 characters in control, each with their own turn. Once it comes up, you have to manually move the character around to position them whenever you want or wherever you want or next to the enemy. Once there, you'll be able to either button mash the regular attack button or use a special skill with the other button. You have a limited amount of time, which is basically an action points bar, to do either type of attack or both. 2 major elements are involved here, pretty much dark and light. Your skills will vary depending on where you stand. If there's a shadow, your element will be dark, for example. Some enemies will be a little bit weaker to one element. And finally, the more progress you make in this game, the time limit to move will be reduced. Sounds stressful, and it is, but that's also why it's very challenging and addictive at the same time. Awesome combat here, definitely befitting such a unique RPG. Number 11, Fuga, Melodies of Steel. These 2 games not only have a very unique battle system, they are extremely unique overall, but their combat plays in 2D and you control several characters in charge of a tank. The tank has 3 cannons and each requires a turn to operate. 2 characters control each cannon, and you can switch between them at any given time. It's important because each character has a different type of weapon, such as simple cannons, machine guns, or grenade launchers, basically red, blue, and yellow colors. Obviously, each character also has its own unique skills, but the enemies are weak to some of these colors, and they often come with shields. Only some characters can break their shields with a specific skill, so the game has you switching characters in and out constantly in order to fight, but it's better to keep the same ones until you break one of the enemy's shields, since very often they require multiple hits to break. The only penalty for changing characters is that you have to wait a few turns before you can do it again. The rest are the usual combat shenanigans seen in other JRPGs, like status effects, co-op attacks, etc. But overall, both games have pretty unique battle systems. Number 10. Igra Union. This game is quite complex, so it'll be tricky to explain. It's a grid-based strategy RPG. You have a small group of characters to control while moving around, but the terrain of every map heavily influences their range. It can be vertical, horizontal, or diagonal, depending on the enemy's position. Each character is basically a commander, and a platoon of soldiers fights in their stead. When you trigger a battle, a 2D screen will show up with the enemy platoon and commander on the right side. You have no control over these battle animations except for the bar up there. You can increase it by holding one button to gain attack power, but lowering defense, or you can decrease it getting the opposite effect as a result. It all depends on who you're fighting against to decide if you increase or decrease the bar. Now, your commander and their troops have stats, but their performance relies strongly on the few cards you select at first. These will give you specific bonuses that apply no matter the type of character, cause troops have classes here, and some may be strong or weak against others. Those are the basics of this combat. There's a lot more to say, many more details, but this is one of the most complex JRPGs ever made, and I'd need an entire video to explain it. Number 9. Growlancer Heritage of War. The series has been known for being real-time strategy RPGs, but this 5th entry, which is my favorite, mixes that same RTS with action! You don't have to decide anything and let everyone act on their own if you want to. You can even manually control your main character and lead them towards the enemies to attack. I recommend using this method for regular enemies that you may see around, but for every boss or main mission, it's always better to use the RTS system. Up to 4 characters can join in, sometimes you'll have a guest, but they'll be out of your control. The ones you control will have a turn-based menu. Here, you'll decide where to move them, who to attack, stand by, cast magic, use a skill, etc. And of course, they'll do anything you decide on real time. But if you let them act freely, they will, but they'll only execute regular attacks. You can do the same with your MC if you want to, but they are the only one that you can manually move freely. I say they because this game has 5 different arcs, each with a different protagonist. And the battle system is the same. There's no need to explain that you use points to increase both active and passive skills of any kind, but it's important to point out that they'll constantly level up, hence why you see all those little messages interrupting the battle. You can skip them quickly, don't worry. Anyway, this is another amazing battle system. Number 8. Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor. We've seen many examples so far that mix strategy with turn-based, but the Devil Survivor duology is my favorite of them all. It's quite simple really, but very unique at the same time. So, you've got your grid-based maps, which are usually small areas, and your party of 4 characters max. Each can equip up to 2 demons to fight by their side. And at the beginning of every map, you'll get a chance to do a skill crack. Basically, you select which enemy skills you want to acquire for your main character, as long as they're available. So you move them around strategically wherever you want to, but once they make contact with the enemy, a turn-based battle will occur. This one will be against a party of up to 3 demons. At first, you decide each of your character's actions, and then the battle will start. If somebody gets a critical or exploits a weakness, they'll get an extra turn at the end. That is the classic Mega Tensei press turn system, by the way. And obviously, passive abilities you have equipped will deeply affect these battles. Separately, these battle mechanics are nothing special, but the combination of both created a very original masterpiece in my opinion. Number 7. Xenoblade Chronicles 3. As I mentioned, I believe games like Final Fantasy XII influenced this combat. I'll cover the third in the series simply because I think it's the best. Unlike in the previous 2, where you had a limited party, here all 6 of them can join, and sometimes even 7 if you have a guest character or an extra hero. Those cannot be controlled by the player. The other 6 will be at your command, and you can switch between them when you want to. Like in FF12, you have to move your character around the enemy to use your preferred skill. Some attacks let you do more damage if you attack them from the side or from behind, but the best way to do every battle, be it a boss or a bunch of regular enemies, is to break them. To do that, you or someone else controlled by the AI will need to use a skill with the break ability, then one with the topple ability. This is called an art combo. Once toppled, you can use either a skill with daze or with launch to consecutively use other skills to do massive damage. You can do this with any character regardless of their class, but it's preferable to do it with regular attackers. This is so the others can focus on tanking the enemies or healing your party. Then there's the chain attacks, which fill up with attacking. They consist of several rounds, and at the start of each, you'll choose between 3 different chain orders. These cause different effects to the enemies and your allies. From there, every chosen character will execute an attack. Next rounds will continue as long as you still have points to do so, because if you reach its limit, the chain attack will end. Whether characters are fighting in human form or interlinked, which is 2 of them fused together, the chain attacks will also occur but will execute differently. This combat is extremely unique and it's honestly extremely addictive, one of the best in this video. Number 6. Project Cross Zone. We first saw this type of battle system in Namco Cross Capcom, which never came out of Japan. Then it followed on the Nintendo DS exclusive Endless Frontier, part of the Super Robot Taisen series. That was a turn-based RPG, however, although the fighting was very similar to that of its predecessor. So along came Project Cross Zone, which retook the grid-based combat. Here, you control a variety of characters that fight in groups. Each group is divided between the main attackers, which are a pair, and one extra character that acts as a summon. So you move around the battlefield on grids, and to attack, you select your target and this 2-battle screen begins. Here you'll have to press the corresponding buttons to execute one type of combo. Once you've used them all up, the battle will end. At any time though, you can summon the extra character I mentioned, who will do its own combo. You need to be careful which combos you use first, because some enemies can be lifted, and if they're high enough, one of your attacks might miss. The goal is to break the enemy's guard so you can trigger a cross attack to have them mostly fixed on a position so you can beat the crap out of them. Enemies won't counterattack, and when their turn comes, within the enemy phase, you'll have the option to let them hurt you or use some action points to either guard, evade, or counter. If you counter, you'll be taken to the same battle screen again, but if you select anything else, you'll just see the action within the map with no battle screen. And that's basically it. Pretty unique combat, right? Both games have the exact same combat, it's just the second game has less combos, that's all. Number 5. Chrono Cross. Cross has this weird system that's not that hard to understand. It's classic turn-based, but your regular attacks are bound by percentages. It sacrifices accuracy for power within 3 levels. You can perform up to 3 attacks if you have enough action points, or just 1 or 2 and return to your position to cast a spell. However, If you use the beginning of your turn to cast any spell, you'll miss the chance to use regular attacks. This game has an elemental system with the elements being opposite to each other in pairs. You know, red opposes blue, yellow opposes green, and so on. You can allocate a certain amount of elements of any color to each character, no matter their native element. You'll be able to add more as you level up. Each character has their own unique skills, a maximum of 3 can be learned, but it's the same. If you use any of them at the beginning of your turn, forget about their regular attacks until the next one. So my advice is to always try to do both normal attacks and spells in one turn, especially since you have to use these normal attacks to be able to increase the level of your element roster. If you want to cast the ones you put on the 7th layer, for example, you'll have to get 7 successful regular attacks, not in a row, just throughout the battle. Sounds convoluted, I know, but trust me, it isn't. It isn't hard to grasp once you've noticed by yourself everything that I just explained when you play the game. Number 4. Fate Extra. In this game you only control 2 characters, your male or female MC and the servant you chose out of the 3 available ones. Once you choose your gender and your servant, you won't be able to change them. So the servant does most of the fighting in turn-based combat, always against just one enemy. There's a bar down there showing the actions selected by both fighters. As for the enemy's actions, some of them you can see, others you don't. You need to guess what they'll choose simply by trial and error. Every action with the exception of the skills is bound by a rock paper scissors mechanic. One type of attack is stronger or weaker than the other, so for each turn you'll have to select 6 actions, but not all of them have to be attack, guard or break. Your main character can open a skill menu to execute a powerful skill. It doesn't matter what the enemy chose in their set of actions, the skill will always do damage. Your MC can also heal the servant as long as they have enough MP. I honestly have never, and I mean never, seen any other combat like this. It's by far one of the most unique, and it succeeded mainly by mixing just a few generic ideas that have been overused by many other JRPGs. It's genius! The upcoming remake doesn't seem all that different, but I don't see the 6 actions bar down there. We'll see how it goes when it comes out. Number 3. Valkyrie Chronicles. All 4 games have the same combat, obviously each with new additions and stuff, but the basics are the same. You start in these large maps and your objectives will often be to capture the enemy base. You can deploy a specific number of characters per mission, each with a different class. Each class has a movement range. Scouts, for example, have a long one, while Grenadiers, for example, have a short one. The point of each battle is to have your units take on different positions until you kill the boss, human or tank, or like I said, capture the main base. You can capture other enemy bases or flags if you want to. It is advised to do so because you can redeploy characters from there once they're yours. However, not everyone will get a turn per phase. Yes, it's one of those games with a player phase and an enemy phase. You only have a limited amount of medals, let's call them tokens to make it easier to explain, that you can use as a turn for one character. Tanks, however, require 2 tokens. Whoever you choose will have 1 turn to move, attack or hide. The enemy will do the same under the same penalties. Now, this isn't a real-time strategy RPG, it's turn-based, but if enemies see you while you're moving around and get close, they will fire at you on real time until you stop and end your turn or hide somewhere or aim your firearm to attack. Enemy fire will cease for that brief moment and you can take your time aiming, making sure you won't miss. And that's why this series, despite being influenced by the XCOM series, have a very unique and special combat. Number 2. Valkyrie Profile 2 Silmeria. Like in most JRPGs in this video, here you have a party of 4. As the battle begins, you'll be able to move one leader character and the others will follow you, but you can also divide your party into 2 teams if you want to. You'll have to walk towards the enemy you want to attack, or you can just dash towards it. Although there's a difference. Walking helps you increase the action points bar, which is shared amongst the party, and dashing uses a bit of it. Still, I recommend dashing most of the time. Enemies have a detection range depending on the type of attack they're planning on using. If you enter it, they'll immediately attack you, but if you don't and attack them from the side or from the back, you can start the combat. Each character is attached to one button and can execute up to 3 attacks, including the mages, but as I said, every action costs action points. Some attacks, like spells, use a lot of it, so chances are if you have a mage, they'll only attack once if you want to have the others attack too in the same turn. Enemies can be broken depending on how much damage you cause and also have certain body parts that are weak, so attacking them may have them enter break mode easily, or you can choose also insta-kill them. Using items or manual spells like healing or buffs also uses action points, but you may risk the enemies changing their attack range. Also, you got a soul crush per character if their weapon equipped includes it. Once you finish up your combo during a turn, an option will appear to click on the corresponding button to activate it. It's a special attack and each contributes to a bar that needs to be full if you want to execute the next character's soul crush. Some of them increase the bar more than others, so the order in which you'll execute them is very important. Yeah, this is a really deep and complex system, but once getting the hang of it, it's a total blast. One of my favorite battle systems in JRPGs. Number 1. Suikoden. Suikoden. What is more unique than the Suikoden series out there? Every single game in the main series has not just one, but 3 different battle mechanics. All of them are turn-based at their core though. Most of the fighting in the games, including final bosses, will play out with regular combat. In that regard, they aren't that unique, but each adds a few aspects to them that make them great. However, the uniqueness comes from the other battle mechanics. All 5 main titles have a duel system. Yeah, you'll be fighting one-on-one, usually your protagonist against a boss with a rock-paper-scissors mechanic. It's still turn-based. One type of action counters the other and so on, and you fight it out like this until one of you wins. Remember Fate Extra? Well, you have to guess what your opponent will do next so you can select the appropriate action. But unlike in Fate Extra, here you guess what they'll do based on their dialogue. They'll say something and you need to figure out what they might do against you. They're intense, that's for sure, but really fun at the same time. But an even more unique feature of the series is their strategy battle systems. Each game has a totally different one. Some play on grids like in Suikoden 2, with these animations fighting between platoons like in the Land Greaser series. Another one is on real time like in Suikoden 5. Yeah, similar to Grow Lancer or Generation of Chaos that I just covered. You select the direction you want your platoon to move to, or the enemy group you want to attack. A triangle system is there though. Each type of platoon and commander is strong or weak against another type. There's just no way any other JRPG in existence comes even close with this kind of uniqueness. Having multiple battle systems, completely different ways to fight enemies or bosses and progress with the story? That's just JRPG creativity at its best. So those were the 25 most unique JRPG battle systems of all time, in my opinion, of course. There may have been others that were left out. I'm pretty sure you will fill the comment section with them. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!